chicken fried, and cold beer on a Friday night, a pair of jeans that fit just right, and the radio.
Hey, Lauren.
Hello.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So for people who aren't familiar with Food 52, it's about 6 years old. It was started by Amanda Hesser and
Meryl Stubbs from the New York Times.
Give us like the little elevator pitch.
Yeah, so we're a food community. We're sort of a social website for everything in your cooking life. Recipes, news articles, we have an e-commerce shop. And how we differ from some of the many other food publications on the web is we're community-based.
Mm-hmm. So talk about the food publishing space in general. I've heard it's kind of big and competitive.
It very much is. Food and the internet's interesting, right? Recipes are databases. So when the internet first started, food was a natural attraction point. You have this evergreen content that's really easy to dump into a database, and people can search for it. But over time, as the internet's gotten more social and sharing and networking-like, a lot of food publishers, although there's many of them, haven't transitioned to take advantage of that, and that's what we think Food 52 does.
Talk about how you do that. Do you use certain tech tools to amplify what you've got?
There's lots of great food publishers, many of whom I read, Food and Wine, Bon Appetit, and the web for them is another publishing platform, right? They're taking their May issue and they're saying, it's ramp season, here's the ramps that you should cook and eat at home. And what Food 52 does is says, home cooks, you're using ramps, what are you doing? Tell us your ideas, and we're sort of the curator. So we're mining our database, which 98% of it is submitted by our community, and looking for indications that recipes are good. So not just our editorial point of view, but if people are saving recipes, printing recipes, tweeting recipes, putting them in collections, which is a model we have on Food 52, those are signals to us that those are popular pieces of content that we should elevate to the top, and our technology does that.
So how much of it is done by technology versus human beings?
Probably the algorithm, when you search, is 100% technology-based, but if we touch a recipe, we being the editorial staff of Food 52, I loop myself in there. I'm not really an editor, but I like pretending that I am, so I'm gonna go with that. If we touch a recipe, that also gives it a little signal that it has our sort of good housekeeping seal of approval.
So you are a platform, which a lot of publishers are trying to become these days. It's a fast and they see it as a fast and inexpensive way to scale an audience. What are some of the pitfalls of being a platform publisher?
I mean, 70% of our content's created by our community, and you may not know that if you went to our homepage, and we don't want you to. Our editorial staff and our community voices are of equal weight. We work with our the community members that we ask to write articles to make sure that they're handing out wine. This is the best.
We're talking about food.
We're talking about food. Sorry, got distracted. Food, wine, we go together. Anyway, some of the pitfalls, photography. If you've ever been to Food 52 or if you pulled it up on the web right now, our photography is actually sort of our brand. We put a really high value on the photography that we take. We have a test kitchen in New York where we're doing shoots all day, 6 days a week, custom shooting a bunch of photography, and for better or for worse, all of us in the world are Instagramming every meal we have, whether it's pretty or not.
So everybody thinks they can be a photographer, is that it?
Or everybody likes to share food. I don't know if they think they can be a photographer, but they certainly like to share their meals.
So I bet there's more hands-on work than you might think in taking these recipes. You have to reshoot a lot of them, I'd imagine?
Yeah,
so test them?
Yep. Like I said, we have a database of about 35,000 recipes, which is just one part of our business, recipes, articles, and a shop. And the database, 98% of them are submitted by the community, but we've reshot 10,000 of them. Wow. So a third of them, I had to start city biking if you're from New York because I was eating a lot. Waistline was expanding. I have 2 children, but I couldn't do the I just had a baby. It was more like, I just still work at Food 52.
Right, I have a test kitchen down the hall. What would you tell other publishers if they're considering going the platform route?
I think that you have to be open. You're going to hear great things, but you also have to be directional. It can't be a total free-for-all, you know. So we have a certain aesthetic and a certain way that we write and a certain voice. We're not asking people to always mimic it, but we do expect it to fall in line. And you know, photography, again, is an interesting idea. The Food 52 photography aesthetic is now pretty common, this sort of top-down. I don't know how many of you are foodies, but this top-down with, you know, a drink and maybe, I don't know, our aesthetic is sort of getting mimicked. So now we have to push ourselves to have a new aesthetic, and we have to work with, we have training demos with our, you know, the people that contribute to our site to sort of have them move along with us. So corralling people and curating while still letting people, you know, have their opinion.
Right, right. And you also, you mentioned earlier, you have a fairly robust e-commerce business.
Yeah.
Which is something that, again, a lot of publishers have tried to do, but haven't always succeeded at. What's your secret? If you were an at-home cook and if you like to entertain, you used to have to go one place on the web for a recipe, maybe somewhere else for an article or a tutorial or a how-to, and somewhere else to buy. So let's say you're making a pie. It's like pie season, right? You would go one place and get your pie recipe. Maybe you'd watch like a YouTube video on how to de-pit an apricot quickly. And then you might buy your pie pan at Williams-Sonoma. And then you take a picture of it and you'd upload it to Instagram. And we have the ability to sort of marry all of those capabilities within our site. So the commerce angle isn't forced. We can be writing a recipe about a peach pie and show you the pie plate that we shot it in. And hey, you can buy it as well. Mm-hmm. And using that same curated model, we're not trying to be Williams-Sonoma. I've said them twice. 52. We're not trying to be, you know, these other brands. We are trying to find these tiny artisans. So the people that sell in our shop are a salt seller in Portland, Oregon, a woman who makes napkins at night after her real job. These tiny purveyors that maybe you wouldn't have heard of who have 40, 50 items that they make in a batch at a time and only sell on Food 52. And because we're authentic in that and not just using big brand names, I think the integration of content and commerce is pretty easy. I mean, ironically, for a food site, lifestyle is one of the biggest items we sell. Like I'm wearing this necklace that I happen to love that's a green bean. Last year, our whisk necklace, which was a custom piece, was our top-selling item in the tens of thousands and thousands of dollars in whisk necklaces. So people come to Food 52 for a curated view on food and home and lifestyle, I guess. What do you see other publishers do with commerce where it doesn't really, where it sort of misses, where it doesn't really hit the mark? What are they doing wrong? I mean, for me, the thing that I would think of is email. How many of us have signed up for a commerce email and unsubscribed as soon as you got your 10% or 25%? Or bought an item and liked a commerce brand and then said, but that doesn't mean I want to hear from you twice a day, right? Like at all. And then you go to opt out and it's just buy. There's not a hear from me once a week or hear from me twice a week or hear from me once a month. Like I can't imagine ever being any company, but particularly a commerce company, and not giving you an opt-out choice and trying to maintain you as some sort of frequency on email. I mean, email is our biggest driver, obviously, as an e-commerce site for sales. So people miss the mark there. So talk about email, since you brought it up, and how that fits into your whole distribution strategy. Today, it's sort of like it's a distributed world in publishing. Is that a concern for you guys? How do you manage all these platforms? Having a consistent voice across platforms, obviously, but also having different content across every platform. So we're not putting the same thing in email that we're putting on site that we're putting in an Instagram video. There are people who just want to hear from us through email, and we want to deliver the content that they want. There are people who only follow us on Facebook, and we know what kind of content does well on Facebook. And the same kind of content might not do as well on Instagram. So from a content strategy, that's what we're doing with email. And then because we're at the heart of content and commerce, our emails have the benefit of, if you're not in a buying mood, maybe there's a recipe or a news article you like, so we can sort of play to whichever mood you're in. You don't always have to be shopping and open this email and think, ugh, they're trying to sell me a $250 green bean necklace. It's worth it, though. I get a lot of compliments. And we have a smaller one. Never stop selling, right? I'm kidding. That's not even my side of the business, but it's funnier. So you're constantly looking at these audience acquisition channels and looking at how much traffic is coming from this channel versus that channel and trying to find some sort of balance? You're trying to make sure one is not, Facebook is not, overshadowing the others too much, or?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can tell you the numbers: organic search, email, social, in that order. But also, as a content and commerce business, you have different levers. So you want organic search because we're a recipe database site in many ways. So people who go to Google and say pie recipe, peaches, and come to your site, use your recipe and leave, have had a really great experience, right? That's what we wanted them to do. They printed a recipe and yippee. But then email does drive our shop sales a little bit more. So we have to sort of double tweak. You can't focus on just one because content or commerce won't get the right balance, I suppose.
So each, I guess, serves a different part of the funnel.
Yep.
The email serves the people who are maybe further down and more likely to buy. They're more loyal customers.
Yep. Yeah.
And the others are more like for reaching people who maybe haven't heard of you before.
Yeah, awareness generators, or social has been the fastest growing from us. I think we've had 450% growth in our Instagram. We're about to hit 1 million followers. And social food is like a gateway food acquisition, right? Like people who are like just starting to think they might cook. Like it used to be 10, 15, maybe 30 years ago, in general, people waited until they got married and then they registered and then they like had their first dinner party on their nice china and they made a pot roast and it was great, right? And now the way that social has made food so accessible, millennials like invite people over and one brings a tart and another brings a 6-pack and one makes a recipe and it sucks and they laugh and they take pictures about it and they're not ashamed, and so social is a good way to get people who are just starting to build up their cooking repertoire.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned millennials. I think you said they're like the fastest growing part of your audience?
Yep.
Everybody's fascinated with millennials and how to reach them. What have you learned about millennials?
I mean, we all know millennials will tell you what they think very quickly. But they are also less sensitive to change. So they're great when we were about to, 3 weeks ago, we read out our site architecture and they respond like, oh, they changed it, no big deal. Okay, here's the new way I'm using the site. So there's that. They're also, from an advertising perspective, which obviously content and advertising are so important, less, they'll call bullshit, pardon my French, on bad advertising, but they're very open and accepting to good advertising, and they have no problem. They've known that model their entire life, so like they sort of get the like pay-to-play concept of like having to see an ad or see an ad integrated well.
Mm-hmm. And to that point, maybe they're responding sometimes to sponsored content or native advertising.
Yep.
You have an interesting approach to doing that. A lot of publishers have this very hard wall separating the business side from the editorial side. But I think you told me that the edit side, actually, you rope them into the process of creating ads?
Yeah, I was listening to Liz, I think, earlier, who was saying, like, oh, we don't have a content house. And we're still very much a startup. I sit, like, this close to Amanda and Meryl, and we don't even have phones. We're a BYOP. But we actually don't want a content house. That's our idea. Like, to us, this isn't some content we're creating for advertisers that's totally different from the rest of our real content. We have the same staff, the same perspective, the same meetings. Like when we go through our editorial meeting, it's seasonal stuff, what's coming down the pike, what's coming in one of our cookbooks, what are the current ad programs. It's just sort of all woven in. And our view is that keeps the same energy, but also quality of content.
It keeps the voice consistent.
Yeah, for sure consistent. Mm-hmm. And it's all part of our content. We don't, like a sponsored piece doesn't go up in gray and like in the corner and then turns off 6 hours later and you can't find it. Like if you sponsor an article, it's there forever. It's a part of that article. The other thing that we don't do anything advertorial, but like really don't, like we find sometimes we close deals, they're like, okay, I know you don't do advertorial, but you're just gonna throw a link in paragraph 3. And I'm like, no, we really don't do advertorial, and we just don't. Our litmus test is if we can take the sponsorship out of the article, would we read it? Would it have value without anybody? And if it doesn't, it's not the right article.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I guess it's a category food is a category where that approach applies probably more naturally than it would in, say, news.
Sort of. I mean, people want in recipes, brands expect like 1 cup of Philadelphia cream cheese, and we don't do that. We do 1 cup of cream cheese. So it sounds like a silly nuance, but we all know how difficult advertisers are.
Yeah. We have time for probably one question, if anybody has a question for Lauren. Yeah.
Sorry we didn't bring appetizers. It's sort of like not nice food on the web, 5:30.
Hello. So with community being so important to you guys and with your Instagram following being so robust, I was curious to know, how do you go about measuring community growth? I mean, are you looking at an aggregate of increases in Instagram followers and Facebook pages and, not pages, likes?
Sure.
And is that part of what you are predominantly bringing to the conversation with advertisers beyond kind of just traffic, given that you guys, you know, when you're succeeding so much on Instagram, you know, that's not necessarily a direct click-through.
Yeah, great question. There's a couple of answers. Obviously, social growth, but also social like tagging. So Instagram, you said 95% of our Instagrams have a person tagging someone else. So that's a really great indicator and a selling point with advertisers. It's not just the people liking it. They want other people to see it. The way that our site works, if you haven't been there, New York Mag, I think it was, called it the Facebook of food, and I thought that was a really good description. You don't need a log on to enjoy the content. It's not like a blocked wall. But if you are logged on, so that gets to, you know, we have almost 1 million of our 4.5 million uniques do log on, you get more tools. You can comment, you can save, you can fave, you can create collections of things. So we have like our general web audience and then our, you know, the growth of those people who actually take the time to set up a login and use a lot of the social features of Food 52. And then the aggregate, like if we're working with an advertiser program, you know, they'll be talking about like CPE, right? Cost per engagement. We can say people are saving, faving, printing, tweeting. We use all the different ways that they're pushing and pulling the information that they're sponsored as indications that the program is doing well. So it's not just a view. Does that answer your question? Great.
Well, Lauren, thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's great.